Without a doubt, Michael Jackson's worth more dead than alive. People wanted him dead.
He was afraid something's not right. Michael told me that they were going to murder him.
In the last decade of his life, Michael Jackson kept telling the people closest to him that he was being hunted. He told his children. He told his sister. He told a German businessman in 13 handwritten notes, quote, "They are trying to murder me. I am scared about my life." The press called it paranoia. The biographers called it medication. The doctors called it sleep deprivation. But the receipts tell a different story. Subpoenaed corporate emails, recorded audio cassettes hidden in a friend's living room, sworn court depositions, a private espionage report, a handwritten protest sign with devil horns drawn on a record executive's face, and a final will and testament, signed in 2002, that quietly removed almost everyone who had ever called themselves family. Tonight, we name the 7 men and women Michael Jackson believed were trying to destroy him in his final years, and we lay out, in court-documented order, exactly what they did. Stay with me to the end, because by number 7, the receipts get terrifying. Enemy number 1, Tommy Mottola. In 2001, Michael Jackson released his final studio album, Invincible. He was nearing the end of his Sony recording contract and preparing to walk away from the label as a free agent, while still holding on to his 50% stake in the Sony/ATV publishing catalog, the catalog that owned the Beatles. A stake worth, by some estimates, more than $500 million. Michael told Sony CEO Tommy Mottola he was leaving. And what happened next, Michael was convinced, was punitive corporate retaliation. Sony abruptly killed the promotional campaign for Invincible. They canceled his September 11th charity single, What More Can I Give? Michael believed Mottola was deliberately bankrupting him until he defaulted on the loans collateralized against the catalog. Then Sony would absorb the shares. On Saturday, July 6, 2002, Michael did something no major recording artist had ever publicly done before. He went to war with his own label. He arrived at Sony's Manhattan headquarters on the top of an open-air double-decker bus. Custom black military jacket, fur-covered red armband, black spandex, combat boots. He led 150 fans in chanting, quote, "Down with Tommy Mottola." The signs read, "Please, Sony, stop killing the music. Terminate Tommy Mottola." Michael held up a handmade poster split into 3 boxes, the good, the bad, the ugly. His own face was in the good box. Mottola's face, with hand-drawn devil horns scrawled across the forehead, was in the bad box. Later that day, at the National Action Network in Harlem, Michael delivered the speech that detonated the industry. Quote, "Sony, Tommy Mottola, is the president of the record division. He is mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish." He said Mariah Carey, after divorcing Mottola, had come to him crying, quote, "This is an evil man. Michael, this man follows me. He taps her phones. He is very, very evil." A few months later, Tommy Mottola abruptly resigned from Sony Music. Enemy number 2, John Branca. If Tommy Mottola was the external enemy, John Branca was the man inside the gates. Branca was the legal architect of Michael Jackson's empire. In 1985, it was Branca who negotiated the purchase of the ATV catalog for $41.5 million, outbidding Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono, and handing Michael the Beatles' publishing rights. For nearly 2 decades, Branca was Michael's most trusted lawyer. Then, in late 2002, Michael's paranoia turned inward. He commissioned a Manhattan-based corporate espionage firm called Inter4 Inc. to investigate his own attorneys. The result became known in legal circles as the Inter4 Report, and what it alleged was almost cinematic. A continuous, quote, flow of funds from Jackson through Mottola and Branca into offshore accounts in the Caribbean. That his lawyer and the head of Sony Music had been laundering his money together. There was almost no actual evidence to support the claim. Years later, Michael's Las Vegas attorney David LeGrand testified under oath that he was, quote, given no credible evidence to support the charges against Branca. It didn't matter. In February 2003, Michael fired Branca with a chillingly formal letter. Quote, "This is to confirm that I am terminating the services of you and your firm effective upon delivery of this letter. You are commanded to immediately cease expending effort of any kind on my behalf." 6 years later, in June 2009, just days before Michael died, Michael rehired John Branca. Branca then produced Michael's 2002 will, which named him as co-executor of the estate. The man Michael had once accused of espionage now controlled the entire billion-dollar legacy. Enemy number 3, Eminem. In late 2004, Michael Jackson was facing trial on multiple counts of child molestation. The press was on him every day. That was when Eminem released the music video for the lead single off Encore. The song was Just Lose It. The video was a targeted, grotesque parody of Michael at his most vulnerable. Eminem dressed in Michael's signature attire. He mocked the plastic surgery. He depicted Michael dancing on a bed surrounded by children, a direct reference to the molestation allegations. And he restaged the 1984 Pepsi commercial accident, the moment Michael's hair caught fire on stage. Michael called into the Steve Harvey radio show a week later. Quote, "I am very angry at Eminem's depiction of me in his video. I feel that it is outrageous and disrespectful. It is one thing to spoof, but it is another to be demeaning and insensitive. I've never attacked a fellow artist. Great artists don't do that." BET banned the video from rotation, but Michael's response did not stop at a radio statement. In 2007, Michael's publishing company, Sony/ATV, quietly purchased the catalog that controlled the publishing rights to every single song Eminem had ever recorded. Every album, every single, every B-side. From that day forward, every time Eminem played one of his own songs on the radio, Michael Jackson made money. The man who had been publicly humiliated now legally owned the artist who had humiliated him. It was the kind of move only one man in the industry would have ever made. The same man who had taken the Beatles catalog out from under Paul McCartney. Enemy number 4, Paul McCartney. In the early 1980s, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson were friends. They wrote songs together. The Girl Is Mine, off Thriller. Say, 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 off Pipes of Peace. During those studio sessions, McCartney made a single mistake. He explained to Michael, in detail, how music publishing worked. He told Michael about Northern Songs, the company he and John Lennon had founded in 1964 to hold the publishing rights to every Beatles song they had ever written. And he told Michael how, through a corporate takeover by a company called Associated Television, a TV, the Beatles had lost control of almost their entire songwriting catalog. Michael listened carefully, and he reportedly said to Paul, quote, "One day, I'll own your songs." Paul laughed. He thought it was a joke. 3 years later, in August of 1985, when the ATV catalog came up for public bidding, Michael Jackson, backed by John Branca, outbid Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono and bought the catalog for $41.5 million. 251 Beatles songs. Permanently. Years later, McCartney spoke about it in an interview. Quote, "I did talk to him about it, but he kind of blanked me on it. He kept saying, 'That's just business, Paul.' And I say, 'Yeah, sure, it's business, but it's also friendship. It's also morals.'" McCartney never publicly retaliated, but the friendship was over. And from 1985 forward, Michael Jackson was a man who knew with certainty that he had taken something from a peer, and that one day someone might come for him the same way. Enemy number 5, Joe Jackson. To understand why Michael Jackson trusted no one in his final years, you have to listen to the cassette tapes. Between 1990 and 1992, a man named Sam Stein, the husband of Michael's friend Glenda Stein, secretly recorded Michael during long phone calls from hotel rooms. Michael never knew they existed. They surfaced years later, and on those tapes, in his own voice, Michael systematically dismantled the public image of his own family. On the tapes, Michael described how his father, Joe Jackson, disciplined the brothers during the early Motown sessions. Quote, "We would come home from sessions, and if we didn't do something right, we'd get beat with a sock full of wet sand because it didn't leave bruises." People in the Motown family knew what was going on. But it was like, you have to portray this certain image. You have to smile. On another tape, Michael lowered his voice and impersonated his father's threatening cadence. Quote, "He's like, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't be where you are today. He'd always tell us that. And I said, you can't keep throwing that in my face." In 2002, Michael signed his final will and testament. He named his mother, Catherine, as guardian of his children. He named John Branca and John McClane as co-executors. He named Diana Ross as backup guardian. Joe Jackson's name appears nowhere in the document. Zero inheritance. Zero control. Zero contact with the children if Michael died. After Michael died in 2009, Joe Jackson filed motions in probate court attempting to remove Branca as executor, alleging fraud.
Leaving Michael Jackson with scars across parts of his head and scalp for the rest of his life.
The estate's attorneys called the claims, quote, "outrageous and meritless." The motions failed. Michael had built the wall between his father and his money 7 years before he died, and his father spent the rest of his life trying to climb over it. Enemy number 6, Diana Ross. This one is different. Diana Ross was not an enemy in the corporate sense. She wasn't trying to take his catalog. She wasn't trying to bankrupt him. But the Stein tapes reveal something more painful. A long, quiet betrayal of trust. The official Motown story was that Diana Ross discovered the Jackson 5, that she nurtured them. Michael repeated this narrative for decades. On the Stein tapes, in his own private voice, he admitted it was a corporate fabrication. Quote, "It's pretend. Growing up with Motown, they tell you, they prep you. They tell you what to say, what not to say. The lies I had to tell. Diana discovered the Jacksons. That wasn't true. She did not discover us. But it's publicity. It's pretend." And then he revealed something even more private. Glenda Stein asked Michael how long it had taken him to get over Diana Ross. Michael paused, and he said, quote, "Years. A hell of a long time." He said, quote, "I thought I was with Diana. That was just in my own mind." Diana Ross was never an enemy. She was the reminder that even the people Michael had loved most had been part of the performance. Enemy number 7, the final handlers. By 2008, Michael Jackson was nearly bankrupt. He had nearly lost Neverland Ranch. He was forced back into the touring industry he had spent a decade trying to escape. The men who took control of his final year were not music executives. They were corporate promoters. And what they wrote about him in their private emails subpoenaed during the wrongful death civil trial, is the smoking gun that validates everything Michael had been telling people for years. First was Tome, an opaque businessman who took over Michael's affairs in 2008 and brokered the financial package that temporarily saved Neverland. After Michael died, Tome sued the Jackson estate for nearly $50 million. The estate fought back through the California Labor Commissioner. Their filings argued Tome had, quote, taken control of virtually all of Michael Jackson's personal and professional affairs through, quote, unconscionable agreements obtained without any arm's-length negotiations. The case dragged through the courts for 10 years before settling, confidentially, in May 2019. And then there was AEG Live, the promoter financing the This Is It residency. On March 5, 2009, the day Michael was supposed to walk onto the stage at the O2 Arena and announce the residency, AEG CEO Randy Phillips emailed his colleagues from Michael's hotel room, quote, "I was starting to freak out. I am completely freaking out. We have a little issue." Michael got drunk. In a separate email, Phillips admitted he had ended up screaming at him so hard the walls shook. In other internal AEG emails, executives referred to Michael Jackson, the man whose tour they were promoting, as, quote, "a mess."
Get hold of some medication through my family contacts, because I've got 6 members of my family in the medical field.
And in one email read aloud in court, the king of pop was flatly called, quote, "the freak." These emails were not leaked. They were subpoenaed. They were entered into the official trial record. Michael's paranoia about the men running his daily life in 2009 was not a symptom of medication. It was a terrifyingly accurate read of the people in the room. Outro: the receipts. Tommy Mottola, John Branca, Eminem, Paul McCartney, Joe Jackson, Diana Ross. The men running AEG Live. 7 enemies, some external, some internal, some financial, some emotional. Michael Jackson did not write their names on a piece of paper. There was no literal enemies list found in the closet at Carrollwood Drive. But across the final decade of his life, Michael told his children that people were trying to kill him. He told his sister LaToya he didn't trust anyone. And he wrote 13 handwritten notes to a German businessman that said, in his own hand, quote, "They are trying to murder me. I am scared about my life." The press called it paranoia. The biographers called it medication. But the receipts are not paranoia. Subpoenaed corporate emails calling him a freak are not paranoia. A protest sign with devil horns drawn on a Sony executive is not paranoia. A 10-year lawsuit with a manager who took control of all his affairs is not paranoia. A father excised from his will who tried to sue his way back into it is not paranoia. Michael Jackson spent the last decade of his life surrounded by people, and not one of them, by his own private words, was someone he could trust. Now I want to hear from you. Of the 7 enemies, Mottola, Branca, Eminem, McCartney, Joe Jackson, Diana Ross, and the men at AEG, which one do you believe did the most damage? Which one was the real enemy? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.